Hi guys, hope you're okay. I'm gonna have to develop some kind of cashy like and subscribe sign off for these, judging by how many I've got to do. Right, this week I'm gonna do a few small screencasts rather than one large one because I'm now splitting you into your briefs for film and magazine. Okay, so I'm gonna be uploading these kind of one at a time. If you want to wait until they're all on board, that's absolutely fine. Today I've done the double page spread codes and conventions for magazines. Um, I've done double page spreads first because they tend to be the most tricky to do. I'll then cover editorials and front covers, and I will also do DVD covers. So the next one tomorrow that goes up will probably be DVD covers for the film brief people. For now, magazine people, you can carry on with your representation work. If you haven't yet submitted that, you've got until the end of the day. And then I will be emailing home on the 16th of May just to check that you're okay. But for now, if you finish your rep work and you're waiting for feedback from me, you can go ahead with your double page spread codes and conventions. Okay, so for those of us that haven't done media studies before, this is the main terminology you will need for your double page spread. Okay, so you will need to make sure that you have a star on those double page spreads. That is a requirement of the brief. You have to have people on those pages. The gutter is where the magazine will fold in the middle, so it's where the glue is applied, where the spine is. If your text or any faces or anything is in that center fold, you will be having marks taken off you by the examiner because the convention is that all text is kept away from the gutter, and faces and things are kept away from the gutter, so that it gets as nice a layout as possible. You will have a headline on a double page spread, which is the largest writing on the spread. It can be a quote from the start, or it could be a play on words to create an intertextual reference. I'll try and find a couple of those for you to show you what I mean. The stand first is normally the first paragraph of the text, which is larger than the main body of the article. It normally goes below the headline. It's not in columns, and it might be centrally justified. So it's normally two sentences, one that introduces the article, one that tells you perhaps the location and the journalist, and then it will launch into the article. The first thing you will see in your main article is something called a dropped cap, and that is the first letter that comes at the top of the first column. Okay, so it will be bigger, it will be bolder, it might be in a different font to the rest of the article, but still in a font that is in keeping with the rest of the magazine. We're looking at a letter that takes up at least 5 lines, okay, and it will drop down from the top of that first letter. So try and imagine that it's hanging on to the top of the top line and dropping down, okay? So that first letter, that dropped cap, drops. It does not rise above that first line of text. You can get double page spreads where this convention has been challenged or played with. More often than not, the convention now is challenged, but you will need to demonstrate that you understand what the convention is before you can then play with it. You'll also have a pull quote in your article, which is a quote from the article, perhaps in quotation marks, which is larger than the column text. It either goes in a column or between the columns to pull the reader through, or it can be anchored to the star. A caption is a small block of text that's anchored to an image that denotes elements of the image depending on the genre. So if it's a music magazine, it might say left to right, these are the members of the band. It might, if it's fashion, have the designer, the price, and perhaps a website where you can buy these particular clothes. Anchorage, you'll know this from right at the start of the course, is when images and text touch each other to denote that they are connected. So think right back to Kiss the Vampire, the anchorage of that letter V on the female star that had her wrist bared and on the cape of that male vampire, to create that meaning. Columns are when you get vertical blocks of text that are identical in height, width, and space from the edge of the page, and also identical in terms of their font size. So I'm not going to make you actually make this at the moment. I'm just going to get you to annotate and denote this to demonstrate that you understand what it is supposed to look like, so that when we get in, I can help you construct this in Photoshop or whatever software you're going to use. The byline is just the name of the journalist and the photographer, which is normally part of the stand first, and then a box separate from the rest of the article that contains extra information about the star is called a grey box. So this might include tour dates or social media handles or links to Spotify or collaborations that that person has done. And then finally, the brand identity needs to be consistent across all parts of your work. So that means the logos, the fonts, the colours, the mode of address, the font sizes, all have to be the same across all of the plans. So it might be worth pausing at this point and just either writing down or scribbling on post-it notes these particular terms so that when you come to annotate, you've got everything there for you. And then I will take you through 2 or 3 examples of double page spreads that currently exist in the market. Okay, so let's have a look at, first of all, this double page spread. Now, it doesn't really matter that we can't read the text just for now, because I just want to look at conventions. So I've put the terms on the left-hand side of the page with the double page spread here on the right. I'm going to talk you through it. It's entirely up to you if you want to do it the same way or if you want to annotate just by kind of dropping the words on the page where you think this is what we see. So you can see we have the headline where it says thinking big. It's the largest text on the page. It is in a serif font, serif lowercase, and you'll see also that the drop cap, the first letter of the article, is in the same serif font. The serif font is also used for celebrity and view at the top, and also for the stand first. Where it says celebrity interview up at the top, that is called a tab. Now, it's not a required element that the board look for. However, if you wanted to put a tab on the top corner of your pages, it's just a feather in your cap in that you've put in an extra convention that the board haven't asked for. So you've basically gone above and beyond. The purpose of a tab is so that when you're flicking through a magazine to find a page quickly, we normally hold it closed and just open it very slightly and flick through until we find what we want. That tab just helps you identify what's at the top of the page, what page you're looking at. So it's a faster way for you to find the information that you need. So we've got tabs, a headline, we've got a stand first where it says the unstoppable Beth Ditto talks plus size politics, her new fashion ranges, BFF, Kate Moss, and baby plans. My eyes are so good. Yeah, so that is the stand first there. So we can see we've got one sentence telling us who the star is, giving us a couple of punch points for the article, and then underneath that in the capital you'll see words by Kate Harley, I think it says, photographs by somebody else. So that there is then your byline. Now you'll see the drop cap, which is that big letter W there, does take up approximately 5 lines of text. So as I was saying before, your drop cap should be about 5 lines of text tall, and it should drop down from the top line. So if that first word, for example, is when, the top of the W isn't going to go higher than the top of the H in when. Okay, you'll also see that the text is shaped around it in a square. That is just to create a little bit of negative space and to create more balance in the piece. You'll also see that each paragraph is indented. So there's a gap at the start of each paragraph, again, just to create a bit of negative space and to help draw the eye through, particularly if you've come back to the article after, like say, if you had to pick it up to go and answer the door or something, or if you're on a train and you had to get up to help someone get to their seat. So that's where we have those indented paragraphs. Now, we don't have a pull quote in this piece, but I think we could safely say that this article would continue onto another page. So there may be a pull quote on the page after. That actually is quite important. This magazine, I would say, is aimed at a slightly older part of that 18 to 34 demographic. So I would say this magazine is aimed at, say, 30 to 34-year-olds. Audiences who know who Beth Ditto is, know that she was in a band called Gossip, know that she is now a solo artist, know that she's friends with people like Jack White and The Strokes, etc. That audience, who are most likely quite well established in their careers, university graduates, AVC1 mainstreamers who perhaps know Beth Ditto from she did the music for a Dior advert about 5 or 6 years ago. So audiences that perhaps know her from then would be more interested in reading an intelligent long read article rather than something short and sensationalized. The word big also acts as a play on words. Beth Ditto is famously plus size, as we can see by the softness of the jawline, and also by the upper arms and hands. She seems to be a plus size model, but she's also incredibly happy. So the representation here would be one of empowerment and also of stereotypes not necessarily limiting meaning. Again, there's no caption on this, but there might be a caption if it was on a separate page. The word big also acts as anchorage, again, telling us that the article is about Beth Ditto and that she is a plus size artist. The word big also then acts as an intertextual reference. So the audience would have to know who Beth Ditto is in order to understand that the word big is referencing her size and unapologetically referencing her size. Moving on next, we'll see the columns. You'll see we have 3 columns of text on this page. Most double page spreads have either 2 or 3 columns. You wouldn't go higher than that, okay? And especially because we're looking for approximately 400 words in your double page spread, we wouldn't go to 1 column either. We wouldn't just have one solid block of text. So people that forget how to do paragraphs, columns and paragraphs are vital, otherwise you will have marks taken off you for A, not meeting the conventions of the brief, and B, spelling, punctuation and grammar. Now it's up to you to just denote how many columns your double page is divided into. It might be that there's text on both sides of this double page spread with a series of smaller images. You would also be expected to understand how those pages break up into columns and how the images are used to create that balance in that negative space. We'll see underneath the first column the page number with the name of the magazine, so that acts as the brand identity. Your magazine will probably have the page number and the masthead in the bottom left-hand corner, with perhaps the social media, so at whatever your magazine is called. And then on the right hand side, it would be the page number with your magazine's website. And what that does is just demonstrates cross-media convergence with your coursework, which is, again, a requirement of the brief and one thing you are asked for in the statement of aims, how your magazine is clearly going to work across platforms. Okay, so that's the first one. This is the second now. So again, we've gone with a single image double page spread. We've got a slightly different layout now. You'll see the difference between the second and the third columns. There's a little bit of space in there, which is done deliberately for stylistic reasons. I personally would discourage you from doing that unless you have a really, really good grasp of the codes and conventions of your magazine. One thing you could do if you were going to do this would be to perhaps put some spare images or your pull quote in that gap. We see here David Bowie. It's an old image of David Bowie as evidenced by the black and white. So the black and white creates that cultural reference for the audience. Audiences that know this style will also know that this is not what he looked like at the time of his death. So this is an old picture. We see a caption in the bottom left corner, so that white box there with the text inside will tell us where and when that photograph was taken. We have the headline, "It keeps dragging me back." So a slightly negative representation here. We have David Bowie with his head in his hands running through his hair, direct address, looking a little bit tormented or tortured. It may just be that he was running his hands through his hair. That headline, however, creates that negative anchorage and creates this persona of a tortured star, which would be interesting for an audience who perhaps feel like they know everything about Bowie. We do have here a historical star who would perhaps appeal to an older audience. However, if you were creating a music magazine for a younger audience, you might decide to use a star like this to educate younger audiences who are starting to find this stuff through things like their parents' record collection, through Instagram, through stars wearing t-shirts or listening to music and professing love for it in interviews. We see again our stand first here, very, very faint, and we can see 3 names. So David Bowie, Mark Beaumont. So David Bowie is the name of the star, Mark Beaumont is the name of the interviewer, and then we have the name of the photographer as well. So again, it's important that you have that information in your stand first. We see 2 dropped caps, which again is unusual for a double page spread, but we see one is larger than the other. So we see the H is larger than the E, which denotes to us that the H is the start of the article. That middle column you'll see has got those 2 lines underneath those blocks of text, which leads me to think that that is a pull quote in the middle of that middle column there. So we have got a pull quote here. We again have very clearly delineated paragraphs of text. You can tell by the length of the lines where the paragraphs are. We have these stylistic black lines of different widths on this page as well, which creates structure and kind of negative space to help you find your way through the article. And then again, you'll see the page number with the website of the magazine in the bottom. Just to show you a template of what double page spread could look like, this here is perhaps how it would look. Perhaps if you were doing an advertorial, this might be how you want to lay it out. So a good spread of images across the double pages with your headline, your stand first, and then you'll see the red arrows. That's how the article would flow. Okay, so you wouldn't split your columns up and then have your text scattered around the page. It has to read in some kind of form. That for double page spreads. There are a couple of tasks I need you to complete. I just need you to find 3 double page spreads then from your genre. If you can, use the magazine that you've used for your research so far. If you find that the magazine you've used for your research now doesn't offer you what you need, switch magazines, switch conglomerates. Just make sure it is still a mainstream conglomerate aimed at an audience of mainstreamers and aspirers, and make sure that that audience falls somewhere within that 18 to 34 bracket. Your double page spreads have to contain images of people and I need to annotate all 3 with all the conventions that you can see, and if the spread doesn't use those mainstream conventions, explain why the producer has chosen to challenge or subvert those existing conventions. Okay, I'll put the deadline up on the Google Classroom. I hope this was helpful. Email me with any questions. I'll see you soon. Bye.